Today, we present a poignant narrative set during the opening of a luxury car dealership. Amidst the glitter and success, a humble and worn man appears, eliciting both curiosity and disdain. On a sunny morning, the city buzzed with the anticipation of a grand event. The inauguration of a new luxury car dealership drew a curious crowd. The dealership, strategically located on one of the busiest avenues, was a true temple of modernity and sophistication. The windows gleamed with shiny, sophisticated cars, each one an automotive masterpiece. Sleek sports cars with aerodynamic lines, elegant sedans with impeccable finishes, and robust SUVs, all showcasing the highest technology and design. The sunlight reflected off the polished surfaces of the vehicles, creating a dazzling display of brilliance and luxury that mesmerized passers-by. Inside the dealership, the atmosphere was electric. The decor was impeccable, blending marble, glass, and stainless steel to create a contemporary luxury environment. Large LED screens displayed promotional videos of the cars in action, adding a high-tech touch to the ambience. Important guests circulated the venue, their conversations echoing with enthusiasm and admiration. Influential businessmen, local celebrities, renowned journalists, and car enthusiasts were present, all eager to witness the launch of the new dealership. The soft sound of ambient music, mingled with the murmur of conversations, created an atmosphere of sophistication and exclusivity. There was a specially reserved reception area where impeccably dressed waiters served champagne and gourmet canapés. The trays glided through the hall, offering delicacies that reflected the same sophistication as the displayed cars. The guests savored the treats while admiring the vehicles, animatedly discussing technical specifications, design, and performance. At the center of it all was Kaio, the visionary entrepreneur who founded the dealership. He embodied success, with his immaculate suit and charismatic presence drawing glances and attention. Surrounded by journalists and personalities, Kaio spoke enthusiastically about his new venture, highlighting the unique features of his dealership and his ambitious plans for the future. Kaio, with his confident demeanor and captivating smile, represented everything many there aspired to: success, power, and recognition. His eyes, always alert, scanned the crowd, observing every detail and absorbing the event's energy. He was the center of attention, yet also a keen observer, noticing everything happening around him. Amidst the elegant and refined crowd gathered for the inauguration, a humble and worn-looking man walked slowly, attracting glances of curiosity and disdain. His clothes were dirty and torn, with visible patches on the knees and elbows, indicating years of wear and neglect. His graying, tangled hair fell over his shoulders, and his long, unruly beard gave him the appearance of someone lost in time and space. He advanced with firm but slow steps, as if each movement was a calculated effort. His eyes, though tired, shone with a silent determination, a stark contrast to his outward appearance. It was as if an inner strength drove him, ignoring the physical discomfort and the critical looks around him. The guests, dressed in elegant attire and sparkling jewelry, could not avoid looking at him with disdain. Murmurs and discreet laughter spread through the crowd. "Look at him," someone whispered scornfully. "What's that beggar doing here?" said another, laughing, trying to mask the lack of compassion with a mocking tone. A young receptionist, impeccably dressed in a black and white uniform, noticed the man's presence and frowned. She quickly approached him, trying to be polite but with a firmness that left no doubt about her intention. "Sir, excuse me, but this is a restricted area. Can I help you with something?" she said, her voice tinged with nervousness and authority. The man ignored her, continuing to walk with the same determination. The receptionist gave a worried look to one of the nearby security guards, who immediately began to move towards them. Meanwhile, impeccably dressed waiters in formal attire, carrying trays of champagne and gourmet canapés, paused for a moment, their eyes following the man. Some exchanged looks of surprise and confusion, unaccustomed to seeing someone like him at such an exclusive event. One of the waiters, a young man with a gentle look, seemed inclined to intervene but hesitated, unsure of what to do. The receptionist, realizing the man's determination to continue, tried again. "Sir, please, you cannot enter here. This is a private area, reserved for guests of the inauguration." The man stopped briefly, his eyes fixed on the horizon as if seeking something or someone. Ignoring the protests, he resumed his slow but determined walk towards the center of the dealership. The receptionist, desperate, ran to the approaching security guard. "Please, do something. He can't be here," she said, her voice low but urgent. The security guard, a robust man with a stern expression, nodded and began to follow the man. He placed a firm hand on the elderly man's shoulder, trying to stop his advance. "Sir, I need you to leave immediately," he said, his voice firm and authoritative. The man stopped again, but this time raised his head and looked directly at the security guard, his eyes conveying a depth of pain and determination that made the guard hesitate for a moment. "I need to speak with Kaio," he said, his voice hoarse and laden with emotion. At that moment, Kaio's voice echoed through the hall, breaking the mounting tension. Watching the scene from afar, he recognized something in the man that no one else seemed to notice. "Let him come," said Kaio, his voice firm yet filled with surprise and recognition. All eyes turned to Kaio, astonished by his reaction. The security guard, who had been firmly holding the man until then, reluctantly released his arm, visibly unsettled. Freed now, the man continued his walk, each step more determined than the last. The crowd, once filled with laughter and whispers, fell silent, curious gazes following every move of the stranger. Suddenly, Kaio caught sight of the elderly man more clearly. Something about the man's appearance inexplicably drew his attention. There was a familiarity in the tired eyes, in how he carried the weight of years and hardships. As the old man approached, Kaio felt his heart race, an overwhelming sense of déjà vu washing over him. When the man's eyes met his, a wave of long-forgotten memories crashed over Kaio like a whirlwind. He saw flashes of a distant childhood, of moments of joy and sorrow, of a man he believed he had lost forever. The features of the elderly man, though weathered by time, still carried traces of a face Kaio knew well. The flashes began with a clear image, Kaio, still a child, seated on his father's shoulders during a sunny afternoon in the park. He remembered the feeling of being so high up, of holding tight onto Roberto's strong hands, while both laughed with the purity of unshakable love. His father ran, pretending to be a horse, while Kaio laughed, feeling the wind on his face and the warmth of the sun. Another flash came soon after. It was a rainy night, and Kaio was at home, lying in bed, frightened by thunder. Roberto entered the room, carrying a soft blanket. He sat on the edge of the bed, took Kaio's hand, and began telling a story about brave knights facing storms with courage. Roberto's voice was soothing, each word a shield against the boy's fears. Another flash, this time of an ordinary afternoon. Kaio and Roberto were in the kitchen, baking a cake. The kitchen was a mess, flour scattered everywhere, and broken eggs on the counter. They laughed together, and Roberto taught Kaio how to mix the batter, patiently correcting his clumsy attempts. That cake, later on, was a culinary disaster, but the shared experience between father and son was perfect. But the flashes were not just of joy. There were also moments of pain. Kyle remembered a night when he woke up to find his mother crying alone in the living room. He was young, but he understood that something was wrong. Roberto was not at home, and that absence was beginning to be frequent. His mother tried to comfort Kyle, saying that everything would be okay, but he felt the anguish in the air. Another painful flash emerged. Kyle was about 10 years old and at the school's football field, waiting for his father to show up to watch his game. Roberto had promised to be there but never showed up. Kyle waited until the end, eyes fixed on the field entrance, hope fading with each passing minute. The feeling of abandonment and disillusionment deeply marked his young heart. And then, the last flash, the night Roberto actually left. Kyle woke up in the middle of the night to see his father walking out the door, a suitcase in hand and a look of despair and confusion on his face. Roberto didn't say goodbye, just looked back one last time before disappearing into the darkness. Kyle, hidden behind the bedroom door, felt his world crumble in that moment. Now, standing in the dealership, Kyle saw all these images pass through his mind with painful clarity. The elderly man's features, though worn by time and hardships, still bore traces of the man he had known and loved. There was something in Roberto's eyes, a mixture of regret and hope, that touched the depths of Kyle's heart. The revelation was overwhelming. Kyle realized that, despite everything, a part of him had never stopped hoping for this moment, for the reunion with the father who had meant so much to him. And now, with the past and present intertwining so intensely, he knew he stood at a crossroads, to continue nurturing anger and resentment or to try to find a path to healing and reconciliation. The guests, silent witnesses to the scene, watched in a mix of curiosity and confusion. It was as if time had stopped, and in that moment, only Kyle and the man existed in the universe. Kyle took a step forward, his body reacting before his mind could fully process the situation. "Father," he whispered, the word coming out almost inaudibly, as if he feared that by speaking it aloud, the vision before him might disappear like a dream. Roberto, with eyes brimming with tears, nodded slightly. "Kyle, my son," his voice was hoarse, filled with emotion and regret. The hall, which had echoed with the buzz of the party before, was now immersed in reverent silence. The stares of those present were fixed on the reunion, as if everyone understood the depth of that moment, even without knowing the full story. Kyle felt his legs waver, and he had to lean on the nearby table to keep from falling. The emotion of reconnecting with his father, of seeing the man who had abandoned him so many years ago, was overwhelming. The questions he had carried for decades, the feelings of anger, abandonment, and sadness, all came flooding back. Roberto, in turn, seemed like a broken man, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I know you have many questions, Kyle. I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But I needed to see you, needed to say how sorry I am for everything." Kyle took a deep breath, trying to control the tears that threatened to fall. "Why now? After all these years?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Because I couldn't go on living without seeing you, without trying to explain. I was wrong, Kyle, so wrong. But I loved you, even in the distance. And I love you now, more than ever," Roberto replied, taking a hesitant step toward his son. Kyle was silent for a moment, his father's words echoing in his mind. He knew it wouldn't be easy, that the wounds of the past wouldn't heal instantly. But in that moment, he felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could find a way back to each other. The two men stood there, staring at each other, while the crowd around them witnessed this reunion. Caio asked Roberto to go to the office, where they continued to talk. Roberto lowered his head, tears streaming down his face, his voice trembling as he spoke. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted the chance to explain, to see you, to apologize in person. I hid behind my pride and shame for so long. When I heard about your opening, I saw an opportunity to find you." Caio sat in a nearby chair, emotionally exhausted. He ran his hand over his face, trying to sort out the thoughts racing through his mind. "Life hasn't been easy for me, but I built something. I did this without you. And now you're here, stirring up everything I thought I had overcome." Roberto approached hesitantly, but stopped a few steps away, respecting his son's space. "You're a strong man, Caio. I saw that today. And I know that the strength you have, part of it came from the pain I caused. But if I can do something, anything, to ease that pain now, I'm willing to try." The two men fell silent, the weight of their words hanging in the air. The past was there between them, but there was also a flicker of hope for a different future. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Caio finally said, his voice hoarse. "But we can try to understand what happened. And maybe, one day, we can find some peace in all of this." Roberto nodded, a slight smile of relief and hope appearing on his face. "That's more than I could have hoped for, Caio. Thank you for giving me this chance." As the inauguration continued outside, inside the dealership, father and son began to rebuild a bridge that had been destroyed many years ago. And perhaps, with time, they could find their way back to each other. "Caio, I never wanted to leave you," Roberto began, tears still in his eyes. "But I was consumed by alcohol. I felt incapable of fighting the addiction, and it ate away at me every day. I saw myself as a failure, a burden to you all. I thought the only way out was to disappear, believing you would be better off without me." Caio looked at his father, anger and sadness mixing in his chest. "You left us when we needed you most. My mother had to raise 2 children alone, and I had to become the man of the house too early. I resented you for that, for abandoning us." Roberto nodded, the pain of his own choices reflected in his eyes. "I know, Caio. And I'm so sorry. I ended up living on the streets, aimless, trying to numb the pain with more drinking. It was only when I hit rock bottom that I realized how much I had lost. I started attending support meetings, trying to rebuild myself. And I heard about you, about the amazing man you've become." Caio took a deep breath, trying to take in everything he was hearing. "It's been very hard, but I made it. I built this dealership, this life, with a lot of effort. And now you're here, and I don't know what to think." Roberto took a hesitant step forward, extending a trembling hand. "I know words aren't enough. But if there's anything I can do to help you, to be a part of your life again, I'm willing to try. I want to be the father you deserved." The silence between them was heavy with emotion and unspoken expectations. The crowd around them, once watching with curiosity, now observed with silent understanding, feeling the weight of the moment. Caio finally stood up, looking deeply into his father's eyes. "This is more than I could have hoped for. Let's try to understand what happened and see where it leads us. Who knows, maybe one day, we can find some peace." Roberto, with a shy and hopeful smile, nodded affirmatively. "Thank you, Caio. This means everything to me. As the inauguration celebration continued outside, father and son began to take the first steps to rebuild a long-lost relationship. The journey would be long and challenging, but a spark of hope was ignited, and both were determined to keep it alive.